Hello, please do let me if you can hear me. Let me know if you can hear me okay. See how this whole shebang works out. Are we okay? Do we have acceptable video quality and audio quality? Chat, please let me know in chat if you can hear me all right. If I have bad audio, I am able to try a different audio source, and we'll see if that works. But if I have bad audio, you have to let me know. I implore you. Let's chat dinosaurs, shall we? A lot of big stuff to do with them. I tell you what. A couple new dinosaur discoveries today. There was that new Metricanthosaurid from China, from Yunnan, which is interesting to see, as I went over earlier. So that's very exciting. It is. This paper describes a new genus and species of the Metriacanthosaurids, Yanmu-raptor jinshajianensis. Jinshajianensis is the specific name from the Zhanghe Formation. Can you give me my hat? It's up there.
Hello, chat.
Hello.
Oh, that's a...
It's bandana. We're getting hat pilled. Oh, jeez. Okay, we're getting hat pilled today.
You want me to stream with you?
You can, yeah. It's up to you. Diagnosed based on the following autapomorphies. An autapomorphy is a trait unique to a taxon within a clade. The anterior process of the post-orbital sheet-shaped and keeps a consistent depth. That's one of those tiny little specific things. Discontinuity in the cervical vertebrae, which is interesting. That's always bizarre. It is a early diverging member of the Metriacanthosauridae. It provides a new alternative phylogenetic topology of non-Coelurosaurian neurons. That's cool. Yeah, it's known from a skull from Yunnan. Well, barely in Yunnan. It's on the border between Sichuan and Yunnan in China. What's your favorite dinosaur? My favorite dinosaur is Acrocanthosaurus attokensis. I do know what you're talking about. Those are Acrocanthosaurus attokensis sounds as part of the sound mixing for, I believe, it was the Velociraptor in Jurassic Park. Is the Mosasaur actually a dinosaur? No, it's actually a giant marine lizard. There's debate over whether it is a monitor lizard or a pythonomorph. I'm on the side of it being much more closely related to the modern monitor lizards, just because it has such well-developed limbs. I mean, it wouldn't necessarily be a snake if it was a pythonomorph, but still. Why are dinosaurs so important? Well, there are still dinosaurs around today, and paleontology isn't just the study of dinosaurs, it's the study of all extinct organisms, including those that don't have living members of their groups. The reason we study paleontology is because it represents an astronomically large data set in terms of time. You could not hope to get any sort of study covering more than 200 years in the modern day. If you start a study right now with a data set of 200 years, it's going to take you 200 years to finish it at the least before you analyze that data, and that's going to take additional time. Paleontology, you can do a 2-year study with a data set of like 250 million years. It is not a fries in the bag diploma, I'll tell you what. When you're using geological time to construct your data set, you can do an incredible amount of research in paleontology, paleoclimatology. I mean, paleontology is pretty much the only reason we know which animals are related to which other animals in the modern day. Because when we're only basing our stuff on, genetic data and shared morphologies, we have no idea about the evolutionary courses of some of the modern animals that are around today. What we know of dinosaurs is literally educated guesses. What we know about just about everything is educated guesses. And while certainly there is a lot of speculation in some paleo art, a lot of it is very well founded in research because we can identify things like osteological correlates and we have dinosaurs with preserved soft tissue structures. We know that we're doing something right with dinosaurs because usually when we do uncover a dinosaur with soft tissue features and skin and such and feathers and things preserved, it lines up with our image of the dinosaur before we learned about it pretty well. And, obviously we find Psittacosaurus soft tissue. There were no predictions about the cloacal structures of Psittacosaurus, which is the genital opening. And we found some interesting new stuff about that. But in terms of, the composition and the muscle attachment points, the kind of scale structures of Psittacosaurus, we were pretty spot on in terms of what you can learn from the bones and what you can learn through phylogenetic bracketing. So what we've learned over the last few years when we're excavating these very well-preserved specimens is that our methods of guessing are conservative, but also pretty spot on in terms of predicting these animals' surface anatomy, because what is preserved reflects scientific consensus before that preserved material is excavated. Another real reason why paleontology is important is because it allows us to predict and analyze the effects of mass extinction and all that sort of stuff on a level beyond like organismal biology. Now, organismal biology is very important because it is work based in constructing the data sets that we can use for these mass extinction studies. When we describe a paleontological find, when we do all that work looking at those osteological correlates and understanding what the animal would look like in life, we're not just doing that so that we can have a fun thing to draw. We're doing it so that we can have all that information for future studies and use it in predicting the effects of mass extinction and all that sort of stuff. So that data is very useful. Is the new dinosaur like Therizino? Yeah. The Duonicus, the new dinosaur that was just discovered, is, I believe, a Therizinosauride. Not a Therizinosauride, but a Therizinosauride, so it's quite closely related to Therizinosaurus. It is a bit smaller. It is, I think, has about the same preservation quality in most of its body. One thing that's interesting is that unlike Therizinosaurus, Duonicus preserves not just the bone that supports the claw, which is called the ungule, but the keratin that grows around the ungule. So that would be like if you found a human skeleton with the nails still attached to the nail bed in the fingers. Could a gun take out a big dinosaur? Depends how big the dinosaur is, depends how big the gun is. I mean, they make guns that explode ships, so... If we're talking about a handgun, yeah, please feel free to ask any sorts of questions in chat. I'm always open to answer it, no matter how basic, no matter how advanced or bizarre. Obviously, if I can't answer it because it's so advanced or bizarre, then I will direct you to someone who can.
Let's see, what's a good dinosaur-related thing?
There's a lot of good dinosaur-related things. Favorite dinosaur? My favorite dinosaur is Acrocanthosaurus. This thing in the background is not a dinosaur. For everyone who's wondering, this creature in the background is an Esdarchid pterosaur. It's not a specific Esdarchid. I wasn't basing it off of the anatomy of any particular one. It is pretty loosely based on Hatzegopteryx. But yeah, it's a short-feathered Esdarchids. How about the most recent terror bird found in South America? I did hear about that. That is a dinosaur. All the terror birds are dinosaurs, but the pterosaurs aren't, which is always funny to think about. Dinosaur research, pretty important to you? Absolutely. There was an old terror bird found in Argentina. Is this... It's a new specimen. I don't know if it's a new species. Dinosaur research is absolutely important. It tells us so much about the way the world operates today, and barely anybody understands how valuable paleontology is to modern science. Yeah, I mean, paleontology is hugely important for our understanding of biology, evolution, the way that all the parts of the body are interconnected, and what serves what purpose. And you just could not do some of the research you do today using the data of only living non-fossil organisms. Do you think dinosaurs would have the ability to mimic sounds like parrots today? It's possible, but very few phylogenetic models recover a complex syrinx like you see in parrots and crows in any sort of non-bird dinosaur. Did Camarasaurus have spines running along its back? As far as I'm aware, let me double check this. Yeah, I don't think we have any dorsal skin from Camarasaurus, so the jury is out on dorsal spines in Camarasaurus. I caution against it in a lot of sauropods because dorsal spines are pretty like ubiquitous among the diplodocids, but I don't know how much they are among the macronarian sauropods. Why does it seem like young people don't care as much about dinosaurs outside of fans of the JPJW series? Because at least in the U.S., if you're coming from a United States perspective, and this is kind of true in a lot of places in the world, education in general is bad. It's getting pretty bad right now.
It was already bad. It's getting worse.
Yeah. It's because people aren't learning. You know, when I was young,
there just aren't things teaching about dinosaurs really as much.
Yeah. My top 3 theropods of all time are Acrocanthosaurus, Acrocanthosaurus atochensis, Japetus barbatus, and Hemicornuta.
Sorry, you were saying something and I cut you off.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I was little, probably my parents more than anything enabled me to be interested in science. I really was not that encouraged when I was super young by school to really pursue science. You really got to foster that in kids. If you show them how cool science is, they'll love it, and they will do it, and they will dedicate their lives to it in a lot of cases. That really doesn't happen. People are so, it's very upsetting to me to see how disinterested a lot of kids are in science and all that sort of stuff, and even in adults, what is your best source that someone can use to get better at paleontology? If you mean, get better at systematic paleontology, if you mean, get into paleontology, then I would say Michael J. Benton's paleontology books. Bringing Fossils to Life is a pretty good introductory paleontology text.
What was the online course that you were suggesting to people?
That's specifically for dinosaurs. It's Rodolfo Curry's, or not Rodolfo Curry's, I forgot his name. Phil Curry's course on dinosaurs. I do like Therizinosaurus. It's very cool. I was more of a history kid. History is science in a lot of cases. What is a dinosaur you find difficult to draw compared to others? All of the Thyreophorans skulls. Thyreophorans just have really bizarre skulls. So Stegosaurus and Kylosaurus, they're all strange. Ceratopsian skulls I've been getting better at. Hadrosaurid skulls I've been getting better at. Sauropod skulls I can do okay. Specifically, sauropod skulls in general are pretty bizarre. Because when you're drawing them, what era was Edmontosaurus? Edmontosaurus was late Cretaceous. 67 about million years ago. I believe, Edmontosaurus coexisted with T-Rex. Hell Creek Formation, and it was also quite far north. Probably spread farther north than Tyrannosaurus, I believe. Yeah. I mean, do you have a favorite Gorgonopsid? I hate to be basic. I like Inostrancevia. Particularly, I like the South African varieties of Inostrancevia that showed up at the end of the Permian.
I don't think you can have a basic take on that when I haven't heard of any of the words that were in that sentence.
Okay, if I said that in a room of Gorgonopsid paleontologists, they'd be like, of course you picked the T-Rex of Gorgonopsids.
Yeah, that's you know what, I'm not going to finish this analogy because we are streaming on TikTok.
There's loads of different Gorgonopsids.
Oh. Huh.
Inostrancevia is absolutely just the T-Rex. Why do they keep nerfing Spinosaurus? Check my YouTube channel. I made a video about that. We're not nerfing Spinosaurus. We're just figuring out more about the animal. And there really hasn't been any changes to the image of Spinosaurus since 2022. I don't want to feel like I'm being antagonistic here, but I have a strong opinion about that. Psittacosaurus is difficult to draw, but I think, gotten a little bit better at drawing Psittacosaurus recently. It's a little bit hard to do from the side, but if you do the skull in perspective, it's quite all right. weirdly, Joshua Noop has like a very specific tutorial in one of his streams about how to draw Psittacosaurus skulls in perspective. Thank you, Sky Guy. I appreciate it. If you like my Monster Hunter videos, go check out my YouTube. I have a 2-hour almost lecture on there talking about basic biological concepts and how they relate to Monster Hunter. Not just biological ecology, too. Oh, I do love a good bit of ecology.
Should check how many views that video has.
I don't get lost in the metrics. It's all right.
I'm just curious. 145.
Yeah. Is it possible that there are other large Spinosaurus like Ochalia with pronounced sails? We don't know if Ochalia had a pronounced sail. It's hypothesized to because it's related to Spinosaurus, but we have literally no material from Ochalia outside of the front chunk of the maxilla, or the premaxilla. So, yes, it's possible. It's quite reasonable. The reconstructions of Ochalia are incredibly speculative. We have no idea what the rest of that animal's body looked like. It was closer to Spinosaurus if it wasn't. I mean, it's up there. It's certainly very up there. And I'm not just here to answer any questions about dinosaurs. I have played Ark Survival Evolved. If you have questions about things other than dinosaurs, if you want to just chat about evolution, evolutionary biology, anything along those lines, if you have just even general science questions, I'll do my best to answer them. If the Indominus Rex was real, where would it live and how would it affect its ecosystem? If you're talking about the Indominus Rex in the framework of a real animal with like real animal behavior, it would probably fit in well-ish with the large theropods of like mid to late Cretaceous South America. If it had the behaviors that it had in the movie, I don't think it would exist for very long. Hello, Camzilla. When do you think life first appeared? Because I've heard so many answers. That's a really good question, and it's kind of difficult to answer. I think it just is dated back to the oldest stromatolite, and then you have to go like projections based on that. The oldest stromatolites are about 3.4 billion years old. A little bit older in Marble Bar in Australia. So I think that's about how far back it goes. But that's how far back our like concrete fossil record of life goes, as far as I'm aware. But it's projected to originate earlier than that, obviously. Thoughts on Spec Evo stories like Altomaros? I like Altomaros. I know the guy who wrote it. He's cool. Cool guy. He's publishing the remake of Altomaros soon.
I think Spec Evo is fun and cool, and you can do a lot of fun things with it.
Yeah, listen to the miniature head on my shoulder. Dr. Ross Geller wrote a paper on velociraptors. What are your thoughts on it if you read it? I think Ross Geller is a hack, and I think he's far too eager when it comes to splitting species and populations within a genera, especially for an animal with such a small sample size. I think it makes sense. I'm in line with like the amyloid world hypothesis, life's origin. I don't know if you're into that. Hello, welcome up, Nubbler. What's your question?
It's not a question. I just want to know your opinion. What is your opinion on the woolly mammoth mice?
I don't think that gets us that much closer to de-extincting woolly mammoths.
Didn't the researchers basically say that?
Yeah. I mean, it's they're kind of transparent about that. They're kind of pivoting away from actual de-extinction of the woolly mammoth and more towards creating an analog for the woolly mammoth and then introducing it to North Russia, which I think is a little risky. In particular, I think our de-extinction efforts are better focused elsewhere, with species that are more recently extinct that we could have an easier time reading and doing for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Possible iguanas could follow similar evolutionary. Possible marine iguanas could follow a similar evolutionary path to mosasaurs. Certainly, if they keep being forced farther and farther out to sea, and they have more and more competition on land, they'll be less incentivized to move well on land and more incentivized to move well in the ocean.
That'll be cool.
Welcome, Camzilla. What's your question?
What's going on, man?
I'm pretty good.
What do you think about, like, evolutionary adaptations with, like, little to no reason for them being there? because I know plenty of animals have things like that, where they have these adaptations and these features on them that have no evolutionary reason for even being there.
Well, are you talking about like vestigial traits that once served a purpose and then became useless, or are you talking about stuff that just kind of shows up?
Stuff that just kind of shows up.
Well, usually when that's the case, it actually has something to do with their sexual success. If it's like, there are two ways that can really happen. One, it's a thing that doesn't really influence the animal or plant or organism's survival rate, but it does influence its reproductive success. So, for example, if there is some instinctual males of a species to females that are more brightly colored, a female with a congenital mutation that causes it to be, bright all over, and for instance, a crab, that crab is going to attract more mates, and it'll be more reproductively successful, and then basically all the crabs will be brightly colored because the ones that have that mutation will propagate, and the ones that don't. In some cases, arbitrary mutations that are rare within a population can, by chance, be common in a subpopulation, and due to either the rest of the population dying out in some random freak event, or that tiny subfraction of the population which has that trait, maybe it's a family, maybe it's 3 families that are all closely related that have that kind of useless or irrelevant trait. If they get displaced to another location and they start breeding successfully, we get what's called the founder effect, where even in the far future, the descendants of that population will probably still have that trait if it doesn't negatively impact their success.
That's fair. So it would sort of fall into the realm, not exactly, but close to subspecies almost.
Yeah,
sort of a similar idea.
If an entire species has it, then that species is the result of probably like founder effect speciation. So think about this. There's a bird species. Imagine like a species of warbler or thrush or finch. And this bird species has 2 distinct alleles for eye color. There are some birds that have green eyes, and there are some birds that have dark blue eyes. And the birds that have dark blue eyes are super, super rare compared to the green-eyed birds. But obviously this gets passed down. So one dark blue-eyed bird breeds, and it passes down those dark blue eyes to its family. And let's say this group of birds migrates as family groups. If this dark blue-eyed family gets blown off course and instead migrates to the wrong island, they establish a population there and they keep returning there, then all of the dark blue-eyed birds that nest on that island will have dark blue-eyed offspring. And then you'll have 2 distinct subpopulations of this original species, one of which has this common useless trait, while the other one has the typical trait. So yeah, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. It's kind of almost like people, where you can have a family, and if you branch off into another family, the offspring are going to start looking different. And evolution, man, science.
It's really cool, and it's so bizarrely complex, but it is very interesting.
I'm not going to talk about it now because this is not the stream to talk about it, but at some point later, I got to talk to you about this thing that me and my friend are working on.
Cool.
It's a completely custom-made, like, Monster Hunter D&D.
That's awesome. Shoot me a DM about that. I will definitely be interested.
All right. I got to tell you about the new monsters we're making.
Definitely. All right. I'm going to go answer some more questions now, but it was great to talk with you, and thank you for your time.
Oh, wait, how do I leave? Do you just have to boot me?
No.
Oh, okay, all right. Later.
Yeah. All right, next up we got Evan Nova. Do we think Parasaurolophus had a sail behind its crest? Not necessarily, but it definitely had some soft tissue going on with that. It's very unlikely that the bone was just exposed. All right, Evan Nova 2, what's your question?
What's going on, bro?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. First of all, I just want to say, dude, my favorite dinosaur is also Acrocanthosaurus. It's crazy to me. I've been meeting so many people lately who their favorite dinosaur is Acrocanthosaurus. That's pretty.
My propaganda is spreading.
That means your propaganda is spreading. That's good. So here's my question. All right, so if you look at some of the largest theropods that exist, if you look at, like, we'll just say like the top 10, if you were to scroll down that list, you would notice that, like, the majority of that list is made up of carcharodontosaurids.
Yes.
But then at the very, very top, you have which I think, the estimates are always changing, it seems like. But at the very top of that list, you have Tyrannosaurus.
Yeah.
Now, like, my main question is, I thought about it. I'm like, okay, why is that? Okay, well, in North America during that time, you had larger herbivores like the Edmontosaurus that you were talking about earlier. But I guess more of my question is, what caused the animals in North America to grow so large versus in these other places where you had these carcharodontosaurids, which, I mean, I don't know if there were any herbivores aside from sauropods that were as large as something like Edmontosaurus, but, like, what was it about Tyrannosaurus specifically? Because, I mean, if you look at its whole lineage, there's a lot of smaller Tyrannosaurids.
Yeah,
so what caused Tyrannosaurus itself to just skyrocket in size compared to the rest of its family?
Yeah, so for Tyrannosaurus in particular, it seems to be a case of a much more robust body and skull that is designed to crush bone as a hunting mechanism, as opposed to Carcharodontosaurids, which tend to have a more typical theropod mode of predation. The Carcharodontosaurids are basically all co-evolving and just getting slightly bigger and bigger with the sauropods, like in South America and in North America to an extent. But the Carcharodontosaurids are mostly eating sauropods. Tyrannosaurus seems to be mostly eating ceratopsians, hadrosaurs, and chylosaurs. And for that, bone breaking as a method of predation is a little bit more viable and just seems to have been more selected for it. So Tyrannosaurus just has a thicker skull and it has a thicker body to accommodate the musculature for that thicker skull. It's just in general a bigger, stockier animal as a result of its style of predation. You don't want to get bigger than you have to be in any case. And for those Carcharodontosaurs, it just seemed that bite force wasn't necessarily as important as it was for Tyrannosaurus rex in particular, because it is an animal that is focused on predation through bone breaking.
Okay, so that's why, how you said they just kind of, the Carcharodontosaurs, they just kind of kept, in a way, upgrading over and over millions of years. Is that why, when you look at the largest theropods, most of them are going to be Carcharodontosaurids?
Yeah, I mean, Carcharodontosaurids were hunting sauropods for many, many millions of years, and so there's a huge diversity as well. There's only one North American bone-breaking tyrannosaurid. It's Tyrannosaurus rex. And then Tarbosaurus is kind of approaching Tyrannosaurus rex in size, but it's not quite there, and it's from Asia. But in terms of the Carcharodontosaurids, there's a huge diversity of Carcharodontosaurids that are doing that same sort of predation style and have very similar morphology, but they're from different times, or they come from different places in the world. And so there's just more genera populating that upper size. If you gave it a few million more years, I'm sure that T-Rex would have enough descendants associated with it that had similar morphology and size, and maybe in a timeline where the dinosaurs went extinct 50 million years later, that top 10 largest theropods list would be all Tyrannosaurus.
Speaking of which, have you read into all the stuff about the separate Tyrannosaurus species, like I think it's Rex and Macraensis, and then there's another one?
So there are two proposed splits. One of them is much more well validated than the other. There was earlier, the earliest one was a split into Tyrannosaurus rex, Tyrannosaurus virgina, and Tyrannosaurus imperator. And that one was proposed a couple years ago.
I think I remember that one.
Yeah, it's not very well founded, particularly because a lot of that can be chalked up to individual variation, and they were basically, rather than picking based on time and locality, they were kind of just sorting the T-Rex into boxes. And so those are more what we would consider morphotypes, as opposed to actual proper species. Tyrannosaurus macraenensis is a species of Tyrannosaurus that is distinctly more gracile and also from an earlier time period, and it's from farther south in the Americas. So it is pretty distinctly another species compared to T-Rex. It's smaller, it has a more light build, and it's from a different area and a different time period. So it's pretty solidly in all those boxes to be considered a separate species.
Okay. Well, dude, thank you for answering my questions, bro. I love this. Is the first time I've seen you. I saw you on my For You page. I decided to come in here. Bro, I think you're awesome.
I appreciate it.
If I think of any other questions, I'll pop back in. You never know.
Yeah, of course. I'd love to have you. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, for sure.
Have a great night.
You too.
Have you ever played Ark? I have played Ark. I'm not a huge fan of like survival games in general, though, so I didn't really enjoy it so much.
The person asking about the Monster Hunter monsters, in terms of size, Monster Hunter monsters are enormous. They, especially in the new games, they are huge. Like if you look at Deshaguma in Monster Hunter Wilds, that is about the size of a T-Rex. They are absolutely massive, and part of the reason for that is just because of kind of the framing of the game. Because you're in third person, they tend to look a bit smaller than if you're in first person. And so they just make them even larger. T-Rex, I think, would be about T-Rex size.
It's likely.
Maybe not the same.
I'm going to answer
length.
I'm going to answer Matt's question here. For some reason, my science teacher says birds aren't reptiles. Is that true?
Nope.
That is not true. Birds are very distinctly reptiles, and I hate to push back against a science teacher because I do love them, and I think they're doing a really excellent job that not enough people do, because it is quite thankless. And so don't take this as a slight against your science teacher, because they probably have a lot on their plate, and they don't have time to study animal systematics. However, the group Reptilia, the class Reptilia, includes birds in modern taxonomy. Birds specifically are not just reptiles. They're sauropsid reptiles. Well, sorry, they are sauropsids, which is a group that includes reptiles. They are then reptiles. They're then, specifically within reptiles, there are archosaurs. Then, within archosaurs, they are avimetatarsalians, which means birdfoot, obviously. Obviously, that was such a stupid and pretentious thing to say. Avimetatarsalian means bird-footed. The term aves in there is related to birds. Within Avimetatarsalian, they're then dinosaurs, as opposed to pterosaurs or some of the other little straggler groups in there. Then there are theropods within the dinosaurs. Then there are maniraptorans, specifically maniraptoran dinosaurs. And then within the maniraptorans, they are avians. Nowhere in there does it say they stopped becoming reptiles. The popular definition of reptile does not include birds because they're by far the most unique group of reptiles, but birds are actually more closely related to crocodiles and crocodiles to birds than crocodiles are related to any of the other living reptile groups. So, your alligators, crocodiles, gharials, they're all closely related to each other and then closely related to birds. And then the snakes, lizards, turtles, tuataras, all that stuff, they're all more closely related to each other than they are to crocodiles and alligators. So if your teacher says that birds aren't reptiles, they also have to say that crocodiles aren't reptiles, unfortunately, due to the law of monophyly. Do you think Saurophaganax deserve to be classified as an Allosaurus or not? I don't think the reassessed Saurophaganax specimen should have even been given a specific name. I think it should just be like Allosauridae indeterminate, because there's really not enough material there. I think it's fine to call the sauropod portion Saurophaganax because something has to bear that holotype material, but yeah, it's just so fragmentary. Yeah. It's great to get into science. Was a raptor related to the terror bird? The terror birds are Maniraptoran dinosaurs, which some people use as a catch-all for the raptors. Maniraptora includes the oviraptors, the oviraptorosaurs, the dromaeosaurs, the troodontids, all those little fingered running guys, and then also the therizinosaurs and some other groups. So in that sense, if you're considering Maniraptora to be the raptors, then terrorbirds just are raptors. If you're considering Maniraptor to just be the dromaeosaurs, which are like the ones that are very closely related to Velociraptor and Utahraptor and such, then they're closely related to the dromaeosaurs, but they're not dromaeosaurs themselves. They're closer related to troodontids and obviously more closely related to the other birds. However, in the sense of being raptorial birds, that is to say birds that take live prey, terrorbirds are absolutely raptors themselves, because just like a hawk or an eagle or a hawk. Oh, I already said hawk too. Or
I knew you were gonna figure out some way to put it in there.
yeah, okay, well, just like a hawk or an eagle or any other kind of predatory bird, terrorbirds are raptorial. What are your thoughts regarding the theory that a few megalodons may still be alive today? In the scientific sense, that's not a theory. It is what we would call a hypothesis, and it is a poorly founded hypothesis. The idea that Megalodon could survive today without enough changes to denote like a new chronospecies or something else is not possible. It's kind of self-falsifying, because all of the lines of logic for Megalodon surviving either rely on just mapping of the ocean being incorrect, like our ability to do oceanography surveys being wrong. So Megalodon in life is a shallow water surface predator. It is perhaps the most visible kind of predatory shark. Megalodon were still alive today, we would observe it everywhere. Like, it would be probably one of the hardest organisms to miss. It's gigantic. Whales are super heavily researched, and we never get any sort of pathologies on whales indicating Megalodon attacks. Much less pathologies, much less live Megalodon attacks being done on whales observed. Like, none of that is present. And if you take the line of logic that Megalodon somehow rapidly changed over the course of like less than 1 million years to completely switch up its mode of life, it wouldn't be a Megalodon anymore. It would be a chronospecies with a different name, and it would be a completely different organism. So either way, Megalodon would be extinct. Yeah, Megalodon is definitely gone. Sorry. Why are there no modern birds with a sickle claw like many dromaeosaurs? There actually are. There are 2 species, I believe, of living terror birds, depending on how you define that term. I define terror birds as everything within Chirimidae. Some people just say Forus Rachidae, but if you use the definition Chirimidae, which is like the I believe the order that terror birds are in, or Chirimiformes. Jeez. I'm just gonna go to the page of the bird. So the living terror birds are in order Chirimiformes, which I consider to be the order of the terror birds, because most kinds of birds are separated by order. Well, the thing is, Joe, if they evolved, then they aren't megalodons. They're a completely different species entirely, and they would be classified as such. Chirimiformes in particular are very closely related to falcons, parrots, and songbirds, which is surprising because a lot of them are really big, runny, and highly predatory. It's surprising that they'd be related to songbirds and all that. But the 2 main families within Chirimiformes are the Seriemas, which are the modern living terror birds. And I mean, it depends. I like to classify groups of birds by order. I'm associating the name terror bird with Chirimiformes instead of Forus Rachidae. But Seriemas, the two genuses within Chirimidae, the family, Chirima and Chunga, are 2 living birds that have dromaeosaur-like sickle claws on their feet, and they look very much like the extinct terror birds. Additionally, basically all the Forus rachids, I think, had a shortened first digit that bore a large claw. Hello, Robert Conrad. What is your stance on Spinosaurus locomotion underwater? I'm waiting for more extensive research that may contradict Sereno et al. Too. I'm also waiting on that. I agree with Sereno's stance on it. I think my glasses are wonky. I think it's unlikely that Spinosaurus was a very well-powered swimmer. I don't think the musculature of the tail was that strong enough. Do you think, given enough time, could raptors reach human-level intellect? That requires human-level intellect to be highly encouraged within the population. It has to be advantageous, and for most animals, it's not. It's really just not that advantageous. A big brain takes a lot of calories to run, and just like sticking a V8 motor in your computer won't improve the performance. For a lot of animals, sticking a very large brain into their body just won't help them survive that much better because, like having that V8 computer replace your, like having that V8 motor replace your computer's battery or something like that, it's going to cost you a lot more. What dinosaur would you say we've gotten information wrong on? And we've made major updates on info. There are a lot of dinosaurs, primarily the dinosaurs that were discovered earliest are the ones that had the most information incorrectly associated with them. Among those, I think probably the most changes have been made to there's some things that we just used to think either were or weren't dinosaurs that we were just completely wrong on. Therizinosaurus was initially classified as a turtle by Russian paleontologists before they later considered it to be a true dinosaur after they found more of it. So I would say Therizinosaurus probably because it jumped multiple cladistic groups over. How does one get into this profession? It's a good question. I'm not a paleontologist. I'm a researcher. I study birds, dinosaurs, their evolution and such. I don't have a degree yet. I'm pursuing my undergrad actively. I do this work. I'm not a formal teacher of it, but in terms of getting into the field, I would recommend pursuing an undergrad degree in biology, geology, environmental science, evolutionary biology, something like that. And definitely getting your foot in the door by working in a museum as part of an internship program that you can then continue or something like that. What's the coolest rock you've found? It's a really good question. The coolest rock I found, well, it wasn't really found, but it was a chunk of obsidian that was given to me by my lesbian ex-girlfriend. And when she gave it to me,
Weren't there multiple?
Well, yeah, but the good one. She's very kind, and we're still on very good terms. It was a chunk of rock given to me by my lesbian ex-girlfriend, and I carried it around in my pocket. It was a piece of obsidian, and one day I hit a table too hard, and the obsidian shattered in my pocket, and I stuck my hand in there, and I took it out, and it was cut all over, and I was bleeding everywhere. I had 2 cuts in my hand, which was pretty nasty, but it was incredibly memorable. Whenever I get a cut on my hand, it kind of reminds me of her. And she's really nice, and I try to talk to her quite frequently, and we're still good friends, which is great. So it's nice to have something. I like that rock particularly because now when something painful like that happens to me, I think pleasant thoughts. So I would have to say obsidian is my favorite rock. Do you like the idea of Spino being a pelican-like wader? I think it's more plausible than it being a major, like a pursuit swimmer. What major should we select to study dinosaurs in college or university? Biology or geology or undergrad doesn't matter that much as long as you get a strong foundation in the natural sciences, particularly with geology. Deinosuchus is very cool. A very cool animal. Now, I believe some dinosaurs still exist somewhere. If you're talking about birds, yeah, you're correct. There are birds everywhere all over the earth. They're dinosaurs. They're true dinosaurs. Now, I believe some dinosaurs still exist somewhere. If you're talking about non-birds, then I would have to disagree. And I think just kind of shooting comments back and forth at each other maybe isn't the best way to have that discussion. So if you want to have a proper conversation, I promise I won't be, mean or degrading to you. I would like to invite you up, and you can hit request to guest if you want to have a back and forth conversation about it instead of me just looking at your comment. I found bones on my land during family. Thought I was crazy, but it confirmed by are dinosaurs a myth? Okay, so this is the first misconception. Everything that was around during the dinosaur times did evolve. Alligators are not dinosaurs. They're non-dinosaur archosaurs. And also, my roommate knows a good chunk about dinosaurs, so...
I do.
Yeah.
I know a decent bit. What was
Yep.
What was the...
So, there were a lot of things that were around during the dinosaurs that appear not to have evolved. And the term living fossil is partially responsible for this piece of misinformation. For example, there are Pseudotsuchians, particularly crocodilian Pseudotsuchians, that look very similar to some of the Pseudotsuchians that we have around today, the crocodiles, the alligators, the gavials and such, or gharials. Gavialus gangeticus. It's such a good scientific name for an animal. Either way, they still have evolved. They would be what we consider chronospecies. They're very markedly genetically different, and if you brought one to the present, it would not be considered the same species as any of those animals today. And you can look at this verifiably. Those fossils are associated with different genera, sometimes even different families. We don't have anything that was living during the Mesozoic that is placed in the same genus as anything today. So they're very, very they're very distant in terms of their actual evolutionary change. So yeah, everything that was around during the Mesozoic did evolve. If the dinosaurs were around there, they did evolve as well. They became a lot of them became birds. The ones that didn't become birds died out. They didn't become birds right at the end of the Mesozoic. A small lineage of dinosaurs branched off from the main groups, the main theropod groups during the Jurassic, and it's called the avians. And over the course of the Mesozoic, they grew and evolved and became slowly more dominant and specialized. And eventually, at the end of the Mesozoic, they were the best equipped to survive the extinction. So there they go. Feathers actually evolved before dinosaurs. The earliest dinosaurs and their relatives, the pterosaurs, were feathered. It's hypothesized that feathers are even ancestral to archosaurs, but I don't know about that. Could you talk about Caprosuchus? I was actually... Why have you and Oblivion been hopping on this FaceTime thing? It's because I like to make eye contact. I like to make eye contact with my chat when I talk at them. Also, it's nice to put a name to a face. I feel like it adds me a little bit of transparency. Anyway, Matt requesting up. Caprosuchus is often depicted as a galloping crocodile with long legs. But that's actually incorrect. That's based on some old phylogeny. Currently, Caprosuchus is best understood to be a Mahajanga so it would be pretty similar to a modern crocodile in terms of its general body plan and anatomy. Not necessarily Evan Nova, because atavism or lack of atavism doesn't necessarily prove or disprove like the existence of a trait. There are pretty similar like integumentary genes between birds and alligators, but the scales of alligators are very highly specialized, and they might overwrite some of the like integumentary genetics of the birds. Hello, Matt. What's your question?
Yo, so I'm like 16. Do you think a museum would hire me as like an internship for like, I don't know, off front desk or anything?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of museums that do summer internships. That some of them are volunteers, but for high school students, when I was in high school, I didn't have a local museum that I could volunteer at, but I was able to get a research assistant position at a biochemistry lab near me, and that's how I got like my start in science. So definitely look at museum internships, or even just like summer programs for high school students. Some of them are a couple weeks long. The key thing is to meet a scientist in your area that you can keep in contact with and ask about opportunities as they come up, because all this advice that I give is pretty general. But if you have contact with someone in the field of science, specifically in the field of paleontology, it doesn't have to be. I've been doing science for a long time, and I've been wanting to do paleontology for longer than I've been doing science. But doing non-paleontological work has definitely helped me get to where I am now. So just try to get in with scientists. When you have an in with the scientific community, people will tell you about opportunities that are much more accessible to you. Yeah. There's
Thank you, man.
one more thing before you go. There's also an opportunity board on the website for Elevation Sciences. They're a private paleontology company based in Montana, but they have a big spreadsheet that they update each year of all the available paleontology internships. A lot of them are kind of competitive, and they're mainly focused at college students, because college and grad students just kind of have more experience in paleontology and therefore are a little bit more hireable for those positions. But if there are any that are available to high school students, I would check on that website. And additionally, you could email the people who are on their staff list and just ask about that, because I'm sure they would be happy to get back to you and answer with some high school level opportunities.
Cool. Another question I have is, some people at school today, I was talking about dinosaurs, and they're saying I'm childish. Do you think dinosaurs are childish? Like,
Absolutely not. I think
I agree, man. I don't get. I mean, I kind of get where they're coming from because it's like really common in little kids, but like also at the same time, just not. You know, like
yeah, I mean, like, there's this whole idea of you can't. I think the whole people who are into dinosaurs tend to be really, really into dinosaurs, and I think it's less about being into dinosaurs specifically as it is the stigma of being really into anything as an adult. Also, high schoolers. I'm sorry to besmirch an entire demographic, but high schoolers, and when I was in high school too, there's people are so obsessed with this idea, either consciously or in the back of their mind, like seeming like an adult. You're not an adult. You're in high school. You go to lunch break. You get there at 8 a.m. You leave at 3. You're not an adult. It's fine. It's fine to be a kid. It's fine to enjoy that stuff. I would
exactly
be a
like.
kid in high
So
school.
what? It's inherently. I mean, if you think it's inherently childish, so what, dude? Like, we're in our teens. Like, why does it matter? You
No,
know,
absolutely.
like.
And also, I don't think anyone really ever stops being childish. I
That's-
mean,
Roommate opinion.
yeah, like
Exactly.
you grow up.
Yeah, what's the age limit on dinosaurs, dude?
Yeah, I mean, probably some of the oldest people I know are more into dinosaurs than any child I've ever met. I challenge you to find a kid who is more into dinosaurs than an adult who is into dinosaurs.
Yeah.
The people I work with probably say more words a day about dinosaurs than the average person says about any other subject.
Dude, thank you. I just appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. I appreciate you. Thank you for your time.
We are getting like 2 inches of rain right now, so I gotta go.
All right. Good luck with that. Is it possible that different hadrosaur species would crossbreed or live in large herds? Absolutely. There's actually the hypothesis that hadrosaur crossbreeding was either, well, hadrosaurs are definitely sympatric. They're hadrosaurs that are very closely related that live close to each other. And so there's a hypothesis that the different crest shapes and structures differentiated as a method of preventing crossbreeding, as species differentiation. Just like how birds of paradise, the males have different patterns, and so the females will only pick males with the patterns that match their species. Were birds the most diverse dinosaur group of the Maastrichtian, including basal avialans and opposite birds? That is a really good question. In terms of saying group is difficult. I mean, the most diverse dinosaur group of the Maastrichtian is probably Ornithischia, but like, it's really hard to estimate that sort of thing because the term group is so subjective. You can really pick any clade. The most diverse dinosaur clade is Dinosauria. From there, you get to Saurischia. You can't really compare clades diversity to anything except the super close ones. Birds are definitely quite diverse among the theropods. There's a lot of different species of them, but also that part of that's because of recency bias that existed at the end of the Cretaceous. There could have been a much more diverse group of theropods in the Triassic or in the Jurassic, and we wouldn't know as much about it because Jurassic fossils are more rare than Cretaceous fossils. Are parrots dinosaurs? Yes, all birds are dinosaurs. The walrus Spinosaurus is not a theory. That was a piece of joke art made in like 2014. It's called Spinosaurus. Yeah, it's not scientifically based at all. It's a joke among paleontologists, paleo people. I am excited for Jurassic World Rebirth. Did eggs have to evolve twice? Once in the ocean or again on land? Land. No. The eggs on land are an adaptation of the eggs in the ocean. The only real difference there is that the eggs on land are fertilized inside the animal in the amniotic sac. Those eggs get fertilized, a shell forms around them that seals the water in. And then those eggs get laid, and it's effectively like a single egg if it were in the water, in like its own little self-contained pond. So if you can imagine hatching out of an egg, it's very similar to like a tadpole or a fish egg hatching. It's just in a very like self-contained thing. J.K. Allard says, "Is the paleo art behind you accurate, and when was it made?" This paleo art, I did this
Last year for Magic the Gathering card.
yeah, last year. This is an illustration I did for Magic the Gathering card. It's not an official one.
It is a proxy for Platinum Angel.
Yeah, it's a proxy for Platinum Angel. It is an Ash Darkened Pterosaur. It's not particularly accurate in the sense that it is adhering to the proportions and anatomy of a specific species of Ash Darkened Pterosaur. There have been some comments by, I believe it was Mark Witten, recently saying that maybe the wing membrane should be a little bit more up here when it's closed, and I kind of understretched it a little bit, so it was a little bit too compact and folded up there. In terms of the head crest, we do have evidence of long head crests in Ishtarkids. So, for example, Thalassodromius is an Ishtarkoid with a very large head crest. In general, this animal has pretty okay proportions for an Ishtarkid. A lot of Ishtarkids have longer necks than this, but longer necks and shorter legs. But it is like a feasible Ishtarkid that could exist. It's not based on a specific species. I just wanted to paint a cool pterosaur for a fantasy setting. I did see the new Dinosaur versus People movie that's placed in the Vietnam War. It's called Primitive War. I'm very excited for it. Do you have a favorite non-dinosaur Mesozoic creature? It's quickly becoming the one that I'm maybe going to illustrate soonish. It is called Jupijkum. It's a kind of phytosaur from the late Triassic. I doubt we could ride pterosaurs, which are not dinosaurs, like Hatzegopteryx or Quetzalcoatlus, particularly because they don't seem to be well adapted for carrying more weight than is there on their body. What about pycnofibers? There is a little bit of pycnofibers around the neck. It's better when you see this in high resolution, but the neck is like fuzzy, covered in pycnofibers, and then so is like the upper body here. Ishtarkids in general generally probably had pycnofiber covering like the other pterosaurs. Do you think it's possible? Oh, I already answered that. I did not see the new dinosaur people somewhere in Russia discovered. I'm not aware of a new dinosaur from Russia. I am new of the two new papers that came out today. There was one publishing on a Metricanthosaur from China. Yunnan raptor. Is that what it was? Yanmu raptor. Yanmu raptor from China. It was discovered in 2006. It was named today. So that's cool. We say that a dinosaur is discovered when it's really published. It's very cool. It's a complete-ish skull, but we have like much better specimens of Metricanthosaurids. I mean, it's good. It's good to improve our understanding of diversity. What niches did birds fill after the KT extinction that pterosaurs filled directly before? There were really, as far as we're aware, not that many like air-to-air predatory birds, or I suppose, like really any sort of vertebrate predator birds that were not like Hesperornithines. And even with just Hesperornithines, you saw this huge radiation of water birds, which is particularly what I study. The Anseriformes got crazy after the KT. You had Anseriformes that were at right when the KT happened. They were basically specialized seed and insect eaters. Immediately they go into all these niches that pterosaurs used to fill, like filter feeding and Pterodaustro and its relatives. No, I don't think when dinosaurs died they turned into different types of tree seeds. Ichthyornis, and those are like near shore divers. I'm talking about like far open ocean fish eating birds like the Pelagornithids and their ilk. Also, just anything that was eating sort of soft-bodied fruits. I know there are some fruit-eating pterosaurs. The Gastronithids in South America. That's more filling a dinosaur niche than a pterosaur one because they didn't fly. But the Anseriformes in particular had a crazy radiation. If I had to give you the coolest answer, it'd be filter feeding. Is there any evidence bird flu affected dinosaurs? I don't know about bird flu specifically, if it even existed in the Mesozoic era, because we can't sequence the DNA of fossil pathogens, if we even have fossil pathogens. But we do have evidence of respiratory infections. Yes, yeah, fruit-eating pterosaurs are mostly in China, but they're pretty widely distributed. As far as I'm aware, the Darwinopteran and Wukongopterid pterosaurs are speculated to have been fruit eating. What do you think of Spinosaurus and the many changes they keep making to my goat? Spinosaurus really hasn't seen updates since like 2022. I don't know why people keep harping on about that. I think part of it is like there are jokes about Spinosaurus being continuously changed, but not really. I mean, there's expected to be a new paper on it about this year. But I like Spinosaurus. I like the new Spinosaurus a lot.
So much good stuff coming out this year.
But yeah, so back to the bird flu question, we do actually have a lot of evidence of respiratory infections in dinosaurs, particularly sauropods, which had super advanced respiratory systems up and down their neck. And we have evidence of respiratory infection progressing into the bone in really interesting ways. What do you know about Mosasaurus? Mosasaurus is really cool. It's a big aquatic lizard. It's not a dinosaur, as I'm sure many folks know. Mosasaurs, not just Mosasaurus, but there's a whole group of mosasaurs, and they're very widely spread. Mosasaurus is known to have eaten a wide variety of stuff in the ocean, probably some unfortunate diving pterosaurs, pteranodontids, potentially ammonites, really anything. It seems from the fossil record that mosasaurs were often voracious generalists. What is your favorite Jurassic Park / World movie? I like the first one. Is there any evidence for the proposed fleshy air sacs in sauropods? The air sacs leaving the skin is neither here nor there. We don't really have that strong evidence for or against it. We do know that they had advanced air sac systems in their neck that invaded the neck bone and were very similar, perhaps even more like specialized in the living birds to some degrees. Are parrots soaring birds? This may lead to another question. I'm going to see if they have a typical soaring bird wing. You could kind of consider them soaring birds. They have a more short distance maneuverability orientated wing. Soaring bird wings are generally a little bit more rectangular. These are a little bit more triangular. But plesiosaurs are not dinosaurs, unfortunately, but they are very cool. Could Velociraptor potentially glide like Microraptor could? There's some ideas about that, but I don't know if they're particularly well-founded. In general, within most dromaeosaurs, flight feathers, as they're perceived, seem to be an adaptation for a behavior called wing-assisted incline running rather than flight. Could an XRF gun help identify dinosaur fossils? Perform element analysis on materials. Identify, no, because I feel like if you were hitting it with, I mean, we do spectrophotometry on dinosaur bones or dinosaur fossils, but in terms of the actual chemistry of them, they vary strongly from individual to individual. So in terms of identification, no, but spectrophotometry is very, very big thing. Can you talk about the Herrerasaurus? Sure. Herrerasaurus is one of the earliest discovered early dinosaurs. It's from the early Triassic in particular. It was discovered, well, not discovered, but it was redescribed by Paul Sereno. He did a lot of research on it. It is thought to be an early Saurischian, maybe a theropod, maybe just a Saurischian. It has a very boxy kind of dromaeosaurid-like head, but the head itself is less similar in actual anatomy to a dromaeosaur as it is to like kind of an early Archosaur, almost Ornithosuchian. Herrerasaurus is really cool, really bizarre, and a very interesting example of kind of a halfway point between the running crocodile type ancestors that we see in Archosauria and the more derived dinosaurs. What do you believe to be the most capable herbivore to defend against large theropods? Personally, just about any sauropod. Just being that big, there's not much you can do about it. The ankylosaurs in general also seem pretty well defended. We don't find a ton of ankylosaurs with seemingly lethal pathologies on them. Were there any prehistoric birds that had teeth? Depends on how you define bird. Having teeth is actually exclusionary in some people's classification of the modern birds. There are prehistoric birds, as there are living birds, that had tooth-like projections out of their bill. And the ancestors of all the living birds did have teeth. Living birds just all belong to a group that lost their teeth. There are some toothed aviolans, which some people consider kind of proto-birds or true birds, depending on who you ask. It's a hairy group to define, or feathery group. But yes, the close relatives of birds do have teeth, though none of the living birds do. What was the most dangerous dinosaur ever? Probably the chicken, because of its incredible capability for disease transmission among humans. Would it be good to assume that after the KT extinction, birds took over the soaring niches? Yes, although I'm not sure if we have any evidence for or against soaring birds